Happy New Year. We are starting off the year strong with a very nourishing chickpea stew today, and we're going to be using our dal masala. So one of the things I want to talk about dal masala is that it is a very kind of a simple blend. It's just cumin, coriander for nice earthy flavor, and then you have a little black cardamom for a little smokiness, and then a little bit of red chili for a kick of heat. And what's great about this is you can use this with like any kind of lentil for a traditional dal, but it also transitions really well if you want to take a lot of wonderful ingredients you may have left over and turn it into like a lovely, more of a stew. So not something you'd eat with like rice and yogurt as you do with the dal traditionally, but something you just eat on its own, like a hearty, nourishing, let's get the year started right kind of soup. So we're going to do that today. And what I had kind of readily available both in my fridge and the remnants of anything decent in the grocery store this week was some baby bok choy, some beautiful stewed carrots. I soaked for about 48 hours actually, just because it's easy, some garbanzo beans, or you can use canned chickpeas if you like. It really is a lovely texture if you just think a little bit ahead and throw some water on it for at least 24 hours. It'll be delicious. And then the base of the stew is the same as the dal, which is going to be tomato and garlic, and you're going to finish with some greens and some lemon. But into our base, we are going to add the carrots, and then we're going to wilt the bok choy a little further along. So come and join me and go over to the stove. Now I am going to use ghee. But please do not feel that you have to use ghee. Obviously, if you don't take dairy, don't use it. But it does impart, it is healthy actually, and it does impart a kind of smoky earthiness to the base. You know, if you don't use like gigantic amounts of it, it's actually delicious. I don't love ghee, the flavor of ghee, but I love cooking with it in my base. It has a natural smokiness that makes you wonder, what is this? It's delicious. So I'm gonna do that. In general, when you're making a base for an Indian food, you want enough to be able to really comfortably grease the bottom of your pan so that, it might be hard to tell, but if you can see JD here, so that when you brown your onions, they brown nicely. You don't want them to stick to the pan. If you're trying to avoid oils and butters and stuff, and you're using like maybe a non-stick pan, no problem. But just adding flavor, adding something healthy, and getting the texture of your onions and your tomatoes and your garlic right is all the little things that make the flavor delicious with Indian food, with any cooking really. But so this is heating up nicely. I also wanted to point out that when you make your base in Indian food, I know there's like a lot of new people here, so if I'm being redundant, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure people who are new, who are just joining us, who are just experiencing moji masala for the first time, kind of understand the importance of the base, cooking the base. So when you brown your onions, they're going to be nice and dark brown, at least like a dark golden brown. You're going to put your garlic in and let it get nice and fragrant. You don't want to burn it. You're going to cook down your tomato till it's really like, almost melted into the base. You're going to add water along the way to sort of form a nice paste that it isn't burning or sticking. So we're going to do that. None of that takes time, by the way. It's just like couple minutes of each step, but doing that right is what holds a lot of the flavor, because into that base is where the spices go. And this is true for just about any dish you do on the stovetop. So, okay, let's get started. I think this ghee kind of got hot pretty quick. And let's go ahead and do that. You can't smell it, but the ghee, it has such a nice smoky smell. And it has a pretty high smoke point. It doesn't burn easily, actually. And, it's different than regular butter. It's clarified butter. And so here we go. So let's let those get. I like to turn my onions a lot. I actually find it like kind of meditative. Keeps them moving, makes them even. As my onions start to brown on the outside, I tend to push them in and move the inner ones to the outside. Just sort of kind of nice even cooking. I'm using a good pot here that does help me cook even. I do a lot of stainless steel cooking, which works really well with Indian food, I find. Sometimes better than a ceramic pot or cast iron type pot, Dutch oven, because um, it just allows for high heat to really use high heat more easily. All right, so I don't know if Katie can see, but we're starting to already get a little translucent, a little soft. But, you know, it's going to be hard to see the color on video because the color gets always altered, I feel like. But we're going for, like I said, a dark brown. And so this stew is great because, you know, I think we've all, even when we try our best on the holidays, you just still end up overeating and too much sugar. And if you're someone who especially tries to be a little bit healthier, you really feel it. You really feel like, oh, I need something different. And like, so for us and our family, we quickly know it's time for something like this. It just becomes very intuitive and very natural, which is what I really love when you cook for yourself, when you eat fresh. And preparing these meals with moji masala actually they're quick meals. You can use what you have. They're pretty forgiving because they're stovetop. You can rough chop a lot of stuff. It does not have to be like perfectly diced. It's not elegant, but it does actually create an elegant dish at the end if you really know how to just finish it off properly with herbs and fresh lemon and all of that. So let's see here. Smells good. So if you don't use ghee, I should say use any high heat neutral oil because we do like to use higher heat when we're cooking. I started at 7, I moved it down to 6, but you just don't want the oil to burn. And I love olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. It can partake a little bit too strong a flavor depending on the dish you're cooking. But if you do exclusively use olive oil, just turn the heat down a little bit maybe so it doesn't burn. Okay. I'm going to add to this some fresh pressed garlic that I just peeled. I love this garlic press. I discovered a garlic press like very late in life, and I don't know how I lived without it for so long. But it does actually, it's like a nice minced garlic, and then the garlic flavor, you don't end up biting like a chunk of garlic, which some people may like. I think in this kind of dish, you don't want that. Just so it really ends up just evenly kind of melting into the dish, which is what I like. The recipe, if you look up our dal, calls for about 3 cloves of garlic. In this stew, I kind of doubled it just to add kind of another layer of flavor because I'm doing so many different veggies in it. But 3 is nice for just a simple lentil dish. And if you do like dals, one of the beautiful things about Indian dals is there's so many kinds of lentils and pulses you can use. I often use red lentil because it cooks super quick, doesn't require any soaking. It has a kind of a nutty, slightly sweet flavor if you get a good quality organic lentil. It's easy to find at any grocery store. But if you want to experiment more with the different lentils, there's just so many kinds, and you can get them. A lot of them, if you don't have an Indian store near you, you can get them on Amazon pretty well. A lot of the actual Indian brands sell on Amazon now, which is great. Okay, so the other thing we do, I always keep water handy. I want to show the pot, JD, because you see it's turning brown a bit. You don't want to burn your pot because you still need to keep cooking. You don't want too much water because it's going to steam the onion. You don't want, but just sort of clears up the pot. And see, now the pot's not burning. So little splashes of water. It's a very common trick or a common method of cooking Indian food. So you can keep the heat high, keep the flavors blooming, which is great. It's going to be important when you add your spices because you don't want your spices to burn, but they do need heat. They do need to open up and sort of get to that next layer of flavor. And that requires heat. You can't really get there with low heat. So almost there with the onion. Also, what I like about this with the chickpea stew is that it really is a family-friendly meal. I find like if you get really nice bread to go with it. My daughter, she's 9. She'll enjoy a dish like this. I make an effort to kind of put in the things she likes. She likes bok choy. She doesn't like every green. She loves carrots. So she likes chickpeas. So seeing it all together in one dish sometimes is a nice way to introduce something new, but where the components are not new. Okay. So I don't know how much you can tell here, but I can really smell the garlic. A little more water for the pan. I think my onion is pretty much there. And I don't want to burn the garlic here. So now I'm going to add the tomato. So again, this step, this onion, tomato, garlic, you're going to find this is the base step for any dish almost you do on the stove. You may not always need onion, you may not always need tomato, but for the most part, even if you're only using one of them, it's the same idea. So you're creating this base, in this case a tomato onion base with a little garlic. We're going to cook down this tomato, it's going to get pasty. And when it gets nice and pasty and the oil starts to separate and the tomatoes a dark brown, that's when you're going to add the spices. And that's going to form the masala base. Sorry.
Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, Denzel. Oh, hi.
All right.
Arula.
So if you're
Anatha.
just joining us, we are making a moji masala chickpea stew today. So we're using our dal masala, and dal, which is really, an Indian lentil of some kind, is a very typical dish you'll find all over India. There's many kinds of lentils and pulses and grains you can use to make a dal. And traditionally a dal would be had with like rice and yogurt or flatbread. But instead, I'm going to be using it to make more of a stew, like a chickpea stew that you would eat on its own, maybe with some nice crusty French bread. Just a very hearty, healthy dish. And into it, I'm layering bok choy and carrots and just some wonderful remnants in my fridge and things that I could find in the fridge that look good. To be honest, the grocery store was not well stocked, so I kind of took the bok choy looked good, so I grabbed that. And we're cooking it the same way, but adding a few more ingredients into the base so that we can make more of a heartier stew dish, really hearty, healthy stew dish to start the year. So I guess the year started, but I'm a little slow. Got sick towards the end of the year a little bit. Nothing crazy, but it just slowed me down a little bit, and I want to kind of recharge. All right, I think JD, if you could show them a little bit, I want to show them how it's really starting. Everything's falling. The tomato is really falling apart. The onion is really, really soft and brown. And there's a point where the tomato is like kind of like a dark, it goes from this bright red to a dark red. And the one thing I do in the winter, I will say, I just sort of keep my eye out. I don't feel like, it's January, tomatoes are not exactly ripe. So the tomato, it's not supposed to make the dish tomatoey. It's supposed to actually just impart basically what is umami, what we understand now is an umami flavor. And if you kind of can't really get that with the ripe tomatoes, I like to use a good quality tomato paste, like Muti, or these sort of double concentrated versions are great. So I'm just gonna have some water handy. I'm gonna put in probably like just that much, if you can show JD. Just a couple teaspoons will really keep the flavor. Yeah, and I think that's just gonna like add a richer flavor to it. So just you can do that in the beginning, not in the beginning, but after you do the onion, right before you put the tomato. Sometimes I actually dilute it in the water itself. It just sort of allows it to spread a little more evenly, a little more quickly. But this tomato paste is really, these tubes that come in the tubes, they kind of dissolve into the dish pretty quickly. Okay, put it up a little bit. Okay, I think we're really getting there. So this is the interesting part of Indian food. Like, it's a lot of the technique is probably things you're familiar with. You cook onions, you cook tomatoes, you cook them down. Think of making a pasta sauce, but you don't necessarily do it as long as you do with Indian food. You kind of do it a little bit longer, And because that extra cooking time extracts a certain depth of flavor. And you're building. So the flavor of the onion, the flavor of the tomato, you cook it a little longer, that adds a little flavor. We're gonna add the spices, that adds a little flavor. You cook down those spices, that adds complexity. The spice flavors come out differently and mix together with everything going on here. You add the vegetables, the lentils, or in this case the chickpeas. So it's continuous layers of flavor, and then you finish off with a little lemon. We finish it with herbs, so there's the freshness that blends in well with the earthiness and the vegetables. So that's how I always like to think of it, just continuously layering different flavors until you get a final, very balanced, delicious dish. So now as we get close to adding the spices, I do like to get the base a little more wet so that the spices don't burn. Not too wet. Again, we're not trying to boil or steam things, but we also don't want it so dry, because I don't really want to turn down the heat too much until the spices are really up and bloom. So I am gonna, before I do that, throw in my carrots here, just to get them into the base. Before I add my spices in, put those down for a couple of minutes. So the tomato onion is really pasty, wet, it's moving around great, it's really well blended. And even the skins, the skins kind of dissolve into the whole dish too, which is really nice. Okay. Give that a few minutes. So you see, I do move around the food a lot. I think with high heat cooking, you get a little more used to that. Tend not to put down or step away too much. If you want to turn, if it's a little much and you can probably do it less frequently. But I don't know, just has a rhythm, I feel like, if you sit there and move it around. And there is something about getting the dish just right by how you sort of nurture it. How you stir, how patient you are when you're cooking, how much you kind of relax into it. It tastes different. I've had situations where we'll make the same thing, like JD and I will make it, we'll want maybe 2 batches of it, and we'll use the same blend, we'll use the same technique, we're sitting there doing it, it will just taste different. Just every hand is different. It's really amazing. But what I want is I want it to be delicious for you. I want you to have your experiences of cooking be successful. Because when you get the hang of this base, it's just like the world becomes so big as far as Indian cooking, because you'll see so many of the techniques are very leverageable, and you can really start expanding your spice base and how you use them and the kinds of dishes you make, and trying new lentils, and all the delicious vegetarian food in Indian cooking. Okay, I think we're gonna go for the spices now. So again, that's our dal masala. And there's the QR code and the shopping list like we have for all our packets. That's for a traditional dal. Same shopping list here, just threw in some extra veggies. We always have the ingredients here up top, organic ingredients, and freshly ground. And so this is a really wonderful small batch family business where we're really just trying to share the wonderful experience of Indian cooking with you guys. So, okay, there we go. Take it out so you can use the whole packet. Some people have hesitated to do that, but don't be scared. Don't be scared. It's delicious. Just that's how you get all the flavor. You need the spices. The spices are everything. When you have the spices, so it's a little wet, but not, you can see the water absorbed a little bit. It's still moving, it's wet enough to move around. You can't smell it, but immediately the spices are opening up. Okay, there's a wonderful sort of earthy smell from the cumin. The coriander actually has like a little bit of almost citrus notes to it. And this needs only about a minute to open up. It's still wet, so I'm not going to add any water just yet. Now, if you want to add fresh ginger and other elements, please feel free. I tend not to add a lot of fresh ginger. Fresh ginger is a very powerful flavor, and I like to sort of eat very balanced. I will add a little garlic ginger paste and a lot of meat dishes. But if you like that flavor, go for it. Just keep in mind, just start with a little bit because you want to keep the balance. There's a lot of wonderful flavors here and you don't want them masked by one spice. Sort of the way I was raised in cooking is that you're not trying to taste one spice. Everything should meld together to form a magical flavor where one specific thing isn't terribly noticeable. And that's really how these blends are designed. So when you follow the recipe, you get this wonderful layered, often complex flavors, but not necessarily distinguishable one thing from another. Okay. Let's go ahead. This is 1 cup of dried chickpeas that I soaked for about 2 days actually.
If you would like this recipe, DM us or send us a message here or anywhere on our Instagram or on our website.
Yeah.
They're at moji, M-O-J-I, masala, M-A-S-A-L-A.com. We're happy to send it to you.
This is so easy. So, I prep for maybe like 5 minutes before this, nothing big. I don't count the soaking of the chickpeas as prepping because I didn't have to do anything. I just had to think about it a little bit early. I knew I wanted to make it. It wasn't even I knew when I was making it. I said, let me just soak the chickpeas, so that's done. So delicious. The texture is going to hold so beautifully. Chopped up some onions, some carrots. You saw me press the garlic. So easy, and that's what I love about Indian food. You can make hearty, delicious, flavorful, like meals you could serve if if a guest came over, you'd happily serve this, but it's not time consuming. And it's so easy to use nutritious ingredients and still have it feel like comfort food, which is also what I love. All right. And this cold is not abating, so really just in time. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to add, you don't have to measure, it's going to be, every lentil's different, like a red lentil, the ratio of water to dry lentils is 3 to 1. For a chickpea that was dried, I'm just going to go with, probably 4 or 5 cups. I'm going to probably cover it by about, leaving like probably a good couple of inches above where it ends. So JD, can I see this here? Well, what's great about it is you can always add water. You can always boil it off if it's too watery. But I would say 4 to 5 cups of water per cup of dry chickpeas. And bring it to a boil and simmer it till it's ready. And then I'm going to add the bok choy at the end. Just let it wilt in there. Closer to the end. So we're going to bring this to a boil. I would say, because it is, they're pretty soft actually. I think it'll probably take, I'm going to guess 30-40 minutes to simmer.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hey, Cynthia. So if you need, if you want it quicker, if you have an Instant Pot, like Instant Pot's amazing. I do like 6 minutes for a dry, like a dry red lentil, which cooks quick, maybe 8 minutes on pressure cook for a chickpea. It is fast. I'm not a big user of the Instant Pot, but I will say for lentils and legumes and all of that, it is really, it's handy and, keeps it warm for you and stuff. But there is something a little bit more deeply flavored when you do it on the stovetop, sort of in a good quality pot like this. All right. So that's it. We're going to bring it to a boil, simmer it, and we will come show you the final result.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
For now.
For now. How long is it?